I'm Russ Flicker.
I'm Lori Ross, and welcome to Unbridled and Unfiltered.
You know, Lori, we should probably start off by pointing out that if you like Broadway, but you only like musicals and dramas, and you wouldn't be caught dead seeing Book of Mormon, you're probably in the wrong place.
If, on the other hand, you enjoy all types of movies, especially comedies from the sophistication of The Big Lebowski to the lowbrow hilarity of Dumb and Dumber, you are in the right place, and welcome.
I love it all. I'll tell you, I love it all. You know, Lori and I have been doing a ton of stand-up lately, you know, trying our luck at stand-up comedy ourselves, which we've been enjoying.
It's been a wonderful and challenging endeavor, and we have just had such a great time, including, and I have to give you huge props for this show that you produced, Russ, called Hilarity for Charity. 2 shows, both sold out, like 500 people, and we raised a boatload of money for type 1 diabetes. So Russ, let's just dive into that. Tell us about how you got into comedy and what inspired you.
Absolutely. It was so fun. I will point out, and this is how when a comic thinks all they can hear is the funny in things, or they try to, and I've said this 100 times that I've raised money for type 1 diabetes. It feels like I'm trying to promote as much type 1 diabetes as I can. But yes, we raised a bunch of money for research to cure and stop type 1 diabetes. But I think you knew that. You know, we've had a ton of fun. The short history is, my wife, going back pre-COVID, maybe 6-7 years ago, got me, a class at Caroline's Comedy Club, to learn how to do comedy on a goof, as a hobby, as a fun thing. And I had such a great time. It led to some opportunity.
So what is your favorite part about being a comedian?
You know, it's interesting. I think that because, as someone who is not in the arts on a day-to-day basis, I'm using the other side of my brain. I'm doing more, I would say, math at work, my full-time job. It's so enjoyable to use that other side of your brain and be creative, and you get to use it in everyday life. Every situation that comes up, you can kind of find the comedy in and jot down an idea.
You guys, you have to go out and check out Russ's set. You are such a natural, and I cannot believe you got into this so late in life. I mean, as a kid, as a young adult, you must have just been, and I didn't know you at that stage in life, you must have been hilarious. I mean, did people sort of encourage you and motivate you? Obviously, you said your wife bought you this one class, but it was like, not everybody can just dive in and be booking clubs like all over our region like you are so quickly.
Well, you're too kind. And it's certainly...
No, I'm really not. And you know that.
There's a lot of people... You're too kind to me right now in this one instance. That's hilarious.
Fair enough.
So Lori is, you are hilarious, and your sets are hilarious. And so, but look, it's a lot of fun. You pointed out that I did it so late in life, none taken. But, you know, I think it is, you know, part of that life experience actually helps you write comedy. I joke that people in their 18, 20s, you know, they don't have as much life experience to draw upon. We have so many situations, be it with family, with friends, but just, having 50 years of experience, a lot of crazy, funny things have happened to us.
Do you have a favorite bit, joke, set? What sticks out? I mean, I can tell you mine, but for you, but I'm curious what you love performing.
Let's both do that. That will be
okay.
fun. I would love to both do that. But I will say that, that my favorite part of comedy is when you really can surprise people. You know, a comedy audience, of course, is expecting, I wonder where this is going. That's the whole game. What are they going to say? And one my favorite joke I actually wrote pretty recently is about me and this other guy making fun of each other, you know, the way men do. And it ends with me saying something funny about his mother. And then he says, that crossed the line, Dad.
Guys talk differently to each other. You know, we put each other down as a form of affection, ladies. That you don't do that. Like this one guy's like, your pickle game sucks. And I was like, yeah, your golf game sucks. He's like, you're flabby. I'm like, not too flabby to have sex with your mom last night. And he got super weird. He's like, whoa, that crosses the line. Dad? My son and I are very close. We're very close.
It works because the audience, I think, is quite surprised.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard you deliver that, and your articulation and where you sort of hit it and your timing it's pretty good. You really are a pro. It's pretty. It's been cool to kind of go through this sort of comedy journey with you because, like, let's face it, Russ, you kind of recruited me.
That may be true. But you have the long history in TV news. You actually have broadcast history. So me recruiting you, I should be behind the camera. You've been in front of the camera for a long time. And so you stepped away to raise kids and then tried doing some stand-up. What convinced you that was a good idea to get back in the game on the stand-up side instead of broadcast news?
So I'm not confident it has been a good idea, but I know you needed my backyard. I mean, we started this in Denver, literally in my backyard, where we use my porch as a stage. And all of our friends and neighbors who were so happy to be outside because it was just coming out of COVID, happily brought their lawn chairs and their booze and their picnics. And we just had a blast. I mean, we're literally throwing ideas like spaghetti against the wall to see what stuck. And it just all kind of blew up from there. And somebody who was at one of our backyard shows said, there's a competition for female comics called Ladies of Laughter, and they do it at the Emmeline Theater in Mamaroneck, which is 5 minutes from where we are here in Scarsdale, New York. So I literally sent 2 clips from my backyard to this competition and actually got selected to do it.
Oh my gosh, my husband will tell you that menopause is like global warming. Probably a thing, but really just an excuse. But let me tell you, people, it is a real thing. It is such a big deal that there was actually a menopause conference in Scarsdale a couple of weeks ago, and something like 1,000 women showed up for it. That's a slight exaggeration, but really there were so many women at this conference that the average room temperature in all of Scarsdale went up by 3 degrees. Con Ed was like, power surge!
And from there, I just met so many other comics. And that's been almost just as much fun is networking with these hilarious, bright other people in the comedy industry.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'll tell you, first of all, let me say that we did these shows in Lori's backyard, but we had 150, 200 people, a friendly audience to be sure, but like all of our neighbors and whatnot. And but that it became clear right away, seeing your sets, Lori, that they are so hilarious and relatable. And that's probably why they tickle people, because people absolutely can understand the joke. Where do you draw your inspirations?
So you mentioned my long career in TV news. I was specifically a business and economics reporter. So I'm like, all right, if I can understand and convey these complex issues and stories, then I should have no problem relating to my teenage daughters. I have 2 daughters. When we started comedy, they were like 15 and 17, 14, 16, something like that, whatever. So it just, joke's on me thinking that I'd have no problem like diving into the stay-at-home mom role. So a lot of my humor is inspired by just choosing, do I want to get really serious and frustrated, or do I want to just have a sense of humor about living in a household with 2 teenage daughters? Frankly, myself being middle-aged and going through all of that hormonal disaster, crisis, however you want to characterize it. So yeah, my poor husband, he's, he's got a lot of estrogen flowing through this household. But yeah, so family stuff, my girls is really my inspiration. And I choose to look and laugh at myself, be self-deprecating. And of course I have amazing feedback and coach and collaboration with you with this podcast. And I'll just like shoot you lines like, hey, what do you think of this? And you just sort of spin it around, polish it, button it up for me. And again, I guess because of the TV back, I have a little bit of an idea how to deliver some of this stuff, but it's a work in progress. And it's comedy is so much more challenging than broadcast news for sure.
Well, it's amazing because, first of all, speaking what you know, and that's probably why it's so relatable because we have, families and wives and all the interactions we have
Yeah.
and that's what's great about it. But I do think that your skills and your history show in your performance, because the timing and the delivery, it's obviously so trite, but it's so true. Um, I don't know if you watch a lot of professional comics, and to the
Yeah.
extent you do, I don't know any favorites, and what have you learned from the pros you see?
So you have to answer this question too, because I'm actually curious what you think and who you watch. I watch them all. I just go through the Netflix subject. I love watching the guys, the girls, really everybody. And I love watching our fellow up and comers. And we actually have a guest coming on, Andrew Rich, who I'm going to introduce here in a moment. But I have to say, what I've gleaned and what the most important thing is just be yourself, be authentic, celebrate who you are, where you come from, where you are in life. You can't fake it. For me, I'm middle-aged. Perimenopause is sexy. The hot flashes, the sweat that comes with them make me feel like I've just run a marathon, burned a ton of calories. It's all productive. But quickly, who's been your inspiration? Who do you like to watch?
Yeah, I like so many, and I've learned so much. To your point, I agree with you. By the way, the authenticity is so important. And I'm like you. I'm lucky. I'm married, 22 years, and having that partner that we laugh through life, relating to that and bringing that up in funny ways and making up things that obviously aren't true. But I would think well, if you see something like comedy, it's obviously not true. But I think one comic that stands out to me is Anthony Jeselnik or Jeselnik. The reason I think I'm so impressed by his comedy is it demonstrates how every word of timing specifically is so important because he's great at surprising the audience on where he's going with a joke. You really don't know where he's going.
Mhm.
And it does require every individual word fine tuned. So I think he's quite good.
Cool. All right, Russ, let's open up our conversation and bring in Andrew. Andrew Rich has been performing stand-up for about 5 years. He performs all across the tri-state area and is a regular at Rhino Comedy in Suffern, New York. He is also the co-host and co-producer of Bing Comedy. Hey, Andrew, great to have you with us.
How are you guys? Thanks for having me. I appreciate
We're
it.
doing great. Tell us about your start in comedy.
I started roughly 5 years ago, right before the pandemic started. I'd say I started doing comedy consistently right around October of 2019. Was doing a lot of open mics and really was committed to it. And I had like my first show right around February. I think the date was February 28th, 2020. That was like
Oh,
So it's your fault.
It really felt that way. And that was like my first real show. And then literally less than 10 days later, everything stopped and we went into pandemic mode and, was off for about 6 months and then hit the ground running, kind of picking up on open mics in a very casual way and really never stopped.
And what got you, like, what were you doing beforehand? Why did you decide to jump into comedy? Just a little bit of background.
Sure. So I've always kind of been creative. I've done some videos online, way back when. Anytime there was birthday parties, anniversaries, like bigger events, I always did some type of formal presentation and always did very well with that. And it was just stand-up was a good way to have a creative outlet. I never really knew what existed out there, that it was actually much easier to get involved and get started in the world of stand-up than most people probably realize. There's open mics every night. They're all over the place, and it's really easy to get started in it. I wish I kind of knew that maybe 25, 30 years
Right.
ago, but at the same time, maybe I wasn't ready. It's something I always kind of go back and forth with. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Andrew. I'm just curious, so Russ and I have had the pleasure of being on a couple of rundowns with you, a couple clubs recently, and you're so polished. When did you find your voice?
I don't even think I have actually.
Okay, fair enough. So you're evolving, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Does anybody ever know?
The truth is, like, you'll do comedy for a bit, and you'll feel great about what you're doing, and then the next day you'll feel lousy, and then you'll go into ruts, and then you'll come back strong, and then you'll go back into ruts. It really is an endless cycle about feeling good and feeling bad about your work. You know, a lot of times, like the show that we did together in Scarsdale, I've been thinking about that, you know, a bit. And one thing that really made that show, I don't want to use, not the word easy, but, you know, a little bit easier, is like the entire audience was my exact demographic. You know,
Totally.
like everybody
All
is
of us.
50 to 60 years old, you know, Jewish, I guess, was the majority of them. And it's like, it's just a perfect demographic for me. And that makes it much easier where, you know, when you go into some clubs and they're 25-year-olds or they're 80-year-olds or whatever there might be, it makes it a lot harder when it's not your exact demographic.
That's a great segue. And I'm curious about, you know, tell us your either, you know, some part of either your worst show or your joke that just died when you were like, holy cow, there's silence. Because we've all experienced that. You've been doing this a lot, and you're quite polished and a very, very funny guy. But back in the day, you must have had some jokes or some nights that just didn't hit.
Of course. I mean, honestly, when we did that show, just the not the first Scarsdale show, but the second one at Yakety Cats, I had a joke that bombed horrifically, right in the middle of the set. It was the joke about the movie Sing Sing and how there's a music program and how these inmates were so lucky to go there, and I would never be that lucky. And if I went to prison, they'd send me to rape. And like,
I
and
remember that.
it bombed horrifically. And
It
maybe it was
did?
me, maybe it was the audience. I don't know, but it was,
I think you're wrong. I think you're too hard on yourself, Andrew.
no,
Wait, but
I listened.
I have to ask you this because you're just the coolest dude, because, you know, I'm just getting started in comedy and have definitely not found my voice. We had two sets, right? And between the two, the second show had started like not even 1 minute. And you walked over to me and you're like, okay, this is a totally different audience. Even though, yeah, it's all our demographic. It was almost like the second sitting was like tired and drunk from dinner or something. And you said, whatever you thought happened in your first set and however you were going to adjust it, strike that. This is a new audience. Start from square one. Can you
That
talk
was
more
impressive.
about how you knew that so quickly?
Oh, I mean, you could just hear their reactions. The first audience was, they were there, they were ready to laugh. You know, it's not to say that you didn't have to earn their laughs, but they were ready to laugh. If you came up with something funny, they would be responsive. They would be verbose about it. I mean, you would hear them. The second audience, you really had to earn it a little bit more. They were, I don't want to use the word skeptical.
Yeah.
That's probably not the right word, but you had to earn their laughs for them to be demonstrative in terms of how they were showing their appreciation. So it was obvious from the first second that the show started. And what I was really trying to tell you, Lori, was like, with any performance, you know, don't try and recreate your prior performance, whether it's earlier that day or a week ago or a month ago. Always perform to that crowd at that particular time. And that's what I was trying to tell, you know, be in the moment, perform for that crowd. Don't try and memorize, don't try and recreate, just perform fresh in that particular moment.
That's such good advice. And I'd say that what I would say, if you haven't tried comedy before and you're listening to this, what's remarkable about that is, while it makes perfect sense, as a beginner myself, I come with exactly what I want to say. And actually, I'm a little nervous about remembering the order of all my jokes. So the idea that I could right before there say, you know, I'm gonna get rid of a few and add a few, which might intellectually make all the sense in the world. I'm not there yet. And so, Andrew, your ability we had two shows the same night, back to back. And Andrew, you know, right as he was listening backstage to the audience, what we all heard, they were pretty drunk, a different crowd, fun crowd, but he was able to make that decision, change on the fly, and by the way, just absolutely crush it in the second set as well, and made it different. So that was impressive.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that's really just a muscle, you know, like you'll get there. It's you know, the more you do comedy, the more comfortable you are with your material and remembering it. And also, like, I do a lot of prep. So, you know, for example, I might have, if I know I'm doing 10 minutes, I might have 15 to 20 ready that I'm going to kind of fit into that 10 and be able to vary. But I'm sure there's material that I had somewhere that would have worked well, and I don't even know that I had it somewhere. So it is a challenge, but I'm always big on prep. I really practice a lot, either if it's going to mics or just kind of rehearsing in my basement, which I'm probably going to do after this for a show I have this evening. I know a lot of people can just go out there and do it. I'm not one of those people. I really need to be prepared and think about the show and think about what kind of audience it might be and have a backup plan. And I really work hard on it.
No, I think hard work is really the message, right, for any career or whatever you're up to. But can we go back to that Yakety Cat show for a second? Because I think your parents were there.
Yeah.
And they were kind of your dad. It's clear where you get your sense of humor from, because he shared with me that you don't always let him come to your shows, and they were very excited to be at that show. So when you talk about the prep that you do, I mean, are you really thinking about who's coming, and are you a little guarded maybe about you're going to let see some of your sets?
Well, I mean, with my parents, it's like if I'm performing in front of them, it's like once I'm on stage, I'll talk about things that I would never talk about with them if we went out to dinner. It's
Right.
like it's a character. It's a different person, even though it's really not. It's probably it's just me. But once you leave the stage, you're never talking about any of those things again. So I'm not guarded. I would say that, if my wife is in the audience, out of respect to her, I will be cautious about what material I'm using, especially if I know she might have other friends there. So that's really the one area. But, with my parents there, I'll go nuts on them. And that I knew they were there, and the material I did was really kind of not humiliating, but it really poked fun at them. But I also know they can take it, they can embrace it, and they enjoy it. So no, with them, it's never an issue.
That's a great, and that's such an interesting point. I think of this partially because as a crutch, because I'm new to comedy. I do make up stories about my wife, my marriage, and kids, and those are characters insofar as they're not real situations, but I think they'll be surprising and hopefully funny. And my wife's a great sport about it, and so are my folks, and my mom in particular, who I was pleasantly surprised at how supportive she was, despite some of these crazy off-color things I say. I will say that I do have extended family that that doesn't love every of my dirtiest jokes or this or that, and I do think that it impresses me, folks like Nate Bargatze, who are able to be so funny and really so clean at the same time. It's almost like, and I know this is not exactly right, but in my head, I think, hey, the more polished I get, I try to move away from the more obvious punchlines, if you will, but it requires a real skill to find something funny that doesn't pull on any of these other elements.
Yeah, especially the thing is, like when you're new, and I consider myself new as well. You're not doing a half hour. You're not doing an hour. So when you have 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever amount of minutes it is, if it's short, you can't really get into longer, drawn out stories and bits. Because let's say you have 10 minutes and you do 5 minutes on one bit. Well, that's half your set. And
you don't get a laugh till the end, right? It's like, so you're doing 5 minutes before the laugh, maybe.
Well, I mean, obviously you want to have some punchlines and things within there, but at the same time, they might not be vibing with what you're doing in that 5 minutes. So I never want to put all my eggs in one basket, but how that relates to what you're saying is that, yeah, if you're doing 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it might be, you kind of have to do those quicker jokes. You can't really go into depth and tell them about yourself because they don't have time to get to know you. So the shorter ones, minute and a half, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, you have to kind of put those together. And that's really something I focused on with the first Scarsdale show. Was I kind of looked at, I'm like, all right, this is going to be a big audience. There's going to be 2 shows. This is my crowd. I'm going to take no chances. I'm just going to go with what I believe will work well for this audience. Quicker punchlines, quicker stories, bang them out. I'm not going to take any chances with any new material. I'm not going to do something that's too in-depth. I am just going to go for this and try and have the best set possible. And when you have 20-minute sets, 25, 30, whatever it might be, then you're able to kind of get into it a little more and get away from those cheaper jokes, I guess is the best way to put it.
So we've talked about these comfort zone, if you will, sets that we've been doing. Talk us through, and you mentioned that you work hard in your prep, but Andrew, give us more detail on how you might set up for a show, Midtown Manhattan, for a bunch of tourists who don't know you, who don't know Westchester. Are you cool with making them feel uncomfortable, with being a little dirty? I mean, like, help us kind of understand that prep process for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I was on a show for about 2.5 years. It was a weekly show at Broadway Comedy Club. It was every Wednesday. It just kind of came to an end recently, and a lot of times those shows would be tourists, and also a lot of times you really had no idea who was gonna be there. In a situation like that, one of the main things, like if you're going a little bit later in the show, you kind of have time to see what they get, maybe pick some things up about them that you can play on. But I mean, it's definitely difficult to find that common ground with any audience. The best analogy I can put is like, if you were doing comedy in the 80s, like everybody has the same common references. Like you can make a joke about Family Ties. Everybody watched Family Ties. You can make a joke about the movie Brewster's Millions. Everybody saw that movie in the 80s. But now, there's really very few common references that everybody has because everything's so diversified. So it really is a challenge to find, for whether it's tourists or young kids or just not your demographic. It really is tough to find. You just kind of look through your material, have some things prepared. I do have like a section of stuff like, all right, if this audience is a little younger, I'm gonna go to that and see what I have here that I might be able to make do with. Or if they're older, it's just about having like an organized system and being able to go to it and just be ready to adapt.
Is that where the crowd work comes in? Maybe do you have any
work's
feedback or tips?
I have not done a whole lot of crowd work. Maybe a sentence here or a sentence there, but it's not something that I've really gotten into or feel comfortable with. That's a totally different skill, and I'm definitely not there yet.
Well, I'll ask you, notwithstanding the fact that you referred to the short jokes that I do as cheap jokes, I'm still going to ask you a follow-up question.
I was talking about myself as well.
I know. I'm just
think you're both cheap.
We all, you know my wife, so you know that's true. It has nothing to do with my comedy. So to that point of you have some stuff in your repertoire for a younger audience, an older audience. I'm curious, and because we're learning comedy. Do you literally have, is it like you're prepping for tonight's show? Are you literally thinking, okay, let me remember, I'm gonna like, here's a couple of ways to go if this wasn't work, or a couple of ways to go with that? Or is it just like, hey, I always know in the back of my head, because I've been doing it enough, if I see a younger crowd, I can remember these 5 jokes or this direction I'm going to go to? Or is it prep like on a day-to-day basis for that sort of thing?
I mean, with the younger crowd, if I get there and I see there's like all younger kids, a lot of times I'll kind of start the show being like, you guys really aren't my target demographic. Any chance your parents might be able to get here in the next 3.5 minutes? That's like a nice little opening, and then I kind of, and then a lot of times, honestly, you're still going with what you have. I mean, there's only so many ways I can identify with this audience, and the truth is, a lot of times they don't even, like, it's like their dad talking to them. Like they don't want to hear from you. You could be really funny, but it's not, it's not you. So, I could dig deep. I can maybe talk about some stuff about my kids and, stuff that might relate to them, but it's definitely challenging. I would say that younger, like real young audiences, when they're 25, something like that, it's a little intimidating up front. You have to really dig deep for that level of confidence. And, if you get a few laughs early on, that definitely makes it easier to continue, but it's definitely a challenge.
It's funny.
I kind of come back to, it's the hardest thing about comedy. If you think about a movie, right? When people go to see a movie, they're going to see a movie that they want to see. When you pay to see a specific comedian, you're going to see a comedian that you want to see. But if you're performing in just a comedy club and you have no idea, those people aren't coming for you, they're coming for comedy. they don't know what they're getting, and you don't know what you're getting, and it's really hard to make everybody laugh. If a specific movie that makes me laugh is not going to be the same movie that makes you laugh, and that's what makes comedy very difficult.
Well, and then to your point, when I went up on stage on one of the comedy contests you run, and they didn't come to the movie, they see this, and they're thinking, that's not what I came here to see, perhaps. And I remember thinking that my jokes might be self-deprecating to me, but the jokes about my kids might be making fun of them. Now, that's good for someone in their 50s because they're relating to me, making fun of their kids. It's not good to someone who might think of themselves more like my kids. So it's a great point.
Like you're a grumpy old man.
It's definitely a challenge for sure.
This has been a great conversation, Andrew. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And we will certainly look forward to seeing you in the club.
Yeah, and we're going to put, this will come out in about a week, Andrew, but what we'd love to do is we'll put in the notes here of this podcast some of your next shows coming up. Andrew is a hilarious guy. I look forward to seeing you again. Really appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that was terrific. Thanks again, Andrew Rich, for being our guest today. Russ, always a blast chatting with you. And of course, everyone out there, thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Next time on Unbridled and Unfiltered. Thanks, everyone.